Good evening and welcome. Welcome to our ACC conversation. So what I want to just sort of jump in right away, and through your body of work, both as a director and as a producer, you focus quite a lot on family, and you've also really brought a very strong female voice into all of your projects. It's a very important thing. So I wanted to ask you how you would define the word feminist.
Well, you're right. I mean, I have been working a lot on family, on women. Most of my films, actually, the films I have produced or directed were on women. And this has started 20 years ago. I don't think I was doing it very consciously then, you know, but being a woman, I was always interested in female characters. I was always interested in female stories, but it wasn't a kind of militant action. You see what I mean? When now, with the years, with the time, I realized that it wasn't an accident that all my films were about women. All my films were about women, even in the 19th century, end of 19th century, beginning of 20th century, in different fields. And it wasn't necessarily important if I was making the film or someone else was making the film. Okay, well, طلعهم نبيل لو سمحت معلش. So this series I did called Women Pioneer was quite interesting because I really was involved in many fields, getting to know these women, even though some men directors also directed the film. It wasn't only women. I mean, the idea of the project was not only women talking about women, but also men talking about women. And I thought that was more interesting than just having woman to woman a project. So and it wasn't only Egypt, it was a project that was covering a wider area. So we had women from Tunisia, from Isabel Eberhardt, from the south, you know, living in the south of Raja Ammari did that film. And the producer was Dora Bushusha. I just saw your talk with Dora. It was very nice. She even had some technical problems like me, but this is the generation. Yes. Yeah. So, and there were women in Lebanon, in Palestine, in Egypt, and in many different fields, you know, art, politics, just popular, you know, not necessarily very important women, but just women who were divas, you know, were called not divas, but popular leaders, you know, in Morocco. So that was the idea of that project, you know, that there were almost 12 films made by 12 different directors about that period of time. And you're right, maybe the other films as well. I mean, I made Women Who Loved Cinema. That was a very important film to me because it was about women who were in this field. And I was in this field and I was very ignorant about how it started. And apparently it started with women in Egypt in particular. So I got extremely interested in those 6 women who started cinema in Egypt almost 2 weeks after the Frères Lumière. So it was very, very early on in Alexandria, in Cairo. Of course, they were very interested in cinema because they were interested in acting also in the films. So this was the main door. But later on, we had 2 women producers who were from the Levant, Asia and Marie Queenie, who were very big producers. I mean, they produced each something like 50 films. And that was a very, very rich career in production. Apart from the one coming from theater, which was Fatma Rojdi or Amina Mohammed, who did only 1 film, but it was an amazing film. So yeah, I was always interested in women. But the point I was trying to make that I I never considered myself a militant feminist. You know, it's only through my work. But times are changing now, and you cannot just be through your work. I think you have to do more than this, because now the media is very alert, and because there are so many stories, and because the era is completely different, and the generation is thinking differently, and things have changed.
Why do you think that we've given the word feminist that kind of militant aura? It seems that we're always redefining, what the word means and how it fits within ourselves. And do you think that is a generational thing? Is that something that is just how we've experienced things with more sense of gender parity, that maybe it's become less militant and just more a part of our lives?
No, it is extremely militant now, especially with all the movements, and for example, the Me Too movement lately. It is militant, but before it was a question of women having the same rights as men, you know. Right. And maybe now it's more than that. It's not just women having the same right, but we're talking about gender issues. We're talking about not only having the same rights, but also having the right to express, not being being in a state of fear as they used to before. Because, for example, in the Middle East, there are a lot of issues regarding women that have to do with culture, that have to do with religion, that have to do with traditions that are extremely important also, you see. So even though there is modernity, even though there is the women are much more educated now, and the issues have become much more complex, I think, much more complex.
But does that also mean that you feel more comfortable in thinking of yourself as a militant than you did before?
Well, I was just telling you now that I was not conscious of the fact that I was militant, but I have been, of course, militant from day one. And this has to come with education, you see. It has to come with what you want to do, what other choices you make, what the decisions you do regarding your job, regarding your status, regarding your family, regarding, you know, it has to do with a lot of things. So maybe I'm more comfortable saying it now. Yes.
What I was saying is just now you talked about becoming, in a sense, more comfortable with what the word means for you, and the decision that partly comes through the decisions that you've made, the decisions you've made about yourself, the decisions you've made about your family. And so I wondered, obviously we're going to move into a discussion of let's talk, but you say making these decisions, have the decisions become easier to make in your life, and how you look at a career, how you look at projects?
I think deep inside, it is clear there is much less confusion. Okay, even though that maybe at the beginning one was trying things, and but now it's very, very clear where to go, and how one. I mean, I've always, you know, I think my father put this in my mind, that it was very important for me to be independent. You know, my father wasn't, you know, he was born in 1910. He was not, if he was alive today, he would have been, I don't know, 110, right? Yes, 110. And he passed away in 82, so something like 40 years ago. But even then, he always thought that I should be independent. He didn't really care whether I would marry, not marry, you know, but he wanted me to have a career. He wanted me to have a good education, to have, you know, to go to university, have a degree, master's degree, the same way my brothers did. And he always thought that this was what he would leave to me, not anything else. you know, just a good education and be able to have a career. He didn't want me to go into cinema. This is something different, but he always thought that I should have a career and be independent. So that was extremely important.
In Let's Talk, though, you also talk about your mother, in a sense, pushing you away in order to build a sense of independence in yourself.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And this is what I have been trying to do with my daughter as well. I think it is something in the family that, and this is something extremely important. This is why when we talk about feminism, or it's not just talking about it theoretically, but living it. You know, it's living it. It's the practice of all this. It's not that just having some theories about it. No, it's living it. And when you live it, there are many compromises, and there are many things that you have to sacrifice as well to be free. It's just not easy in a society where there are a lot of traditions, there are a lot of taboos, there are a lot of a lot. I mean, I feel that in the past 20, 30 years, women have gone forward a very, very long way, because they're more educated. They have created a lot of mechanism to fight against you know, ideas, backward ideas and things like that. And maybe this is what's causing a little bit of you know, difficult situation in society now between men and women. Of course, it's not that easy, because I feel that women have gone a long way, much more than men, much more than men. I mean, the patriarchal society we've grown in, it was in the subconscious, you know, that things have to be this way. It's not that because you're capable of doing something. No, things have to be this way. And then if you're good, it's okay. It's good enough. It's good enough. You know, it's good enough. But it's very hard to fight this. Very, very hard to fight. Even though the women have a big role to play in the families, a big role to play professionally now. You have a lot of women, even in cinema in Egypt. You have a lot of directors, you have producers, you have editors, you have writers, you have, you know, they do find it hard to find their place. I mean, they fight harder. They fight much harder.
They fight much harder, but then how do we train the men to listen harder?
How do we train the men?
To listen
It's education.
Harder. Because, okay.
Yes, to listen hard. But I think this has to start very early on, very, very early on. It's education, it's growing up, it's in the families, it's in the schools, it's in the society. I mean, it's not something that is going to change very suddenly, but education.
You had worked on in a unfocused way, in a sense, on Let's Talk for a long time. You've been filming your family, you've been asking these questions. At what time, well, what happened that made you think, okay, now is the moment for me to put it together and to actually make the film?
Okay. I don't think I was not focused. I was focused, but it took a very long time. It means
it was the wrong word to use. My apologies.
No, I understand. I'm happy you used that word, because it's. I understand what you mean. Is that I had a lot of material, you know, because maybe when you work on a film like this, it's you do have a lot of material. You cannot just have a storyboard, like Youssef Chahine used to say, you know, have your storyboard and go shoot. It's impossible. You know, you have a lot of material that you collect over time. I've been collecting this material because I always felt the urge of taking photos. You know, taking photos is an urge to me, is a way of keeping memory of things. So I used to do this all the time for years, you know, with with the first video camera, and then something more sophisticated, then more sophisticated. But I always used to work on my own and using these cameras, and be able to take pictures and footage of very intimate moments that the family would spend together, you know. So so for many years I did that, but the turning point or the trigger was when I had this conversation with my daughter Sarah in Paris, and I was not prepared at all. I was doing the film and I was turning around, and here I was not focused at all. I didn't know what was the angle that I wanted to take for that film. What was the premise? What, you know, I had material. I thought it was very good material, but I didn't know what I was talking about, you know. So that discussion I had with my daughter was the real trigger of the film. And when we had this discussion, we spent the whole day discussing and talking. We were in Paris. I had a small phone, a Samsung, that I'm not very good at technical, you know, things, and so I started filming her, and then she started filming me, and that was a magical moment where I said, I have a film. That day I said I have a film, and then I had a film. I had put my finger, or I knew what was the main, what I wanted to talk about, and then this was regarding the content. But then I had to do with all this material, I had to present it in a professional way, because I wanted it to be a film and not just you know, some family footage that I was showing.
How much did the editing process change how you viewed your own memories? How did you process?
Yeah.
Yeah,
continue.
Well, well, I was just curious because there's so much insight in the film, and it's insight that you're looking at yourself, you're looking at your parents, looking at your family, and how those interactions happen. I mean, for me,
the editing,
for me, I think that we become adults when we begin to understand our parents' psychology. And that could happen when we're in our 20s. It can happen when we're in our 50s. And so I'm wondering how the editing process of physically working with that material changed how you processed some very painful moments.
Absolutely. This happened to be in my 60s, but it's okay. No, you're right. Editing was extremely important, and actually the writing of the film did take place during the editing. I was lucky to have a very I consider her my second eye. You know, I was lucky to have this editor who ended up working with me, because at the beginning she was not the editor, she was the translator. Because when I looked at the archives, I found that I had a lot of, because I had recorded a lot of things in French, in English, in Arabic. You know, the way we speak, we mix languages very much. And my editor, the one who did Zilal, it was an impossible mission for her to do that film. Or at the beginning, we said we have to translate all this. All this footage has to be translated. So I had Perihan, who did the translation of all the things. These were really notebooks, a lot of hours of footage that I had. And do the structure of the film from this footage. I did the structure of the film from the sound. Okay, I listened to all this sound for hours and hours and hours and hours, and then I did the structure, building each character. I don't know, each character in the film is built in a very, I mean, I worked on each character. I worked on the mother, the uncle, the grandmother, the daughter, my father, even the secondary characters who were in the film. I did the character is very well built, and how much you're going to give to each character. You know, for example, it was easy to use a lot of footage of Shaheen because it's very catchy. but I didn't want this because he was important in the film as an uncle, as a brother, as a son, not as Yusuf Shaheen people know, you know?
Sure.
So there was all the time this question of dosage. So the editing took a very long time. We almost spent 2 years in this editing room. And as I said, I had each shot in the film is not haphazard and it is meant to be there, each shot. Of course, with material like this, you can do thousands of cuts, taking into consideration many things. Some things may be family, concern, political, others may be culture, many concerns. So this is why we had a rule that nobody should interfere during the editing unless we invite people to come. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. You've frozen, but I can.
Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you.
Okay.
It's interesting because you talked about just now how the editing was partly about building character and bringing each character out. So you mentioned your mother, your father, your uncle, your aunt, your daughter. You didn't mention you.
Yes. And no, also my character was built because it's in the film. Actually, it's in the film because in the first part of the film, I am interviewing. I'm talking to my aunt. I'm talking to my uncle. I'm talking to, I'm there, but you don't see me in the film. And then I appear when my daughter decides that I should be there, and she takes the camera and she starts filming me. And this is a very important moment in the film.
It's a very powerful moment.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it came at the right time, because if it had come earlier, I don't think it would have been the right moment.
No, I agree. It was just funny how you had left yourself out of that list, and I wanted to make sure that we brought you back into it.
No, I was there.
You certainly are, and were and are. The film, of course, it played at the Cairo Film Festival. It's played at other festivals. Now we're in the COVID nightmare, where festivals are either online or not happening, or it's already it was a difficult film to distribute.
Absolutely, yeah.
This makes it harder. So, what were your expectations when you gave birth, in a sense, and how has that changed since the film's premiere?
Yes. I think, there are two very, very, very critical moments. The first screening at IDFA was when I really gave birth. All right. Yeah. So that was very important to me, because it's a very, the very strong festival regarding documentary films. And this was a big recognition that it was taken in competition. And the second very, very important moment to me was in the Cairo Film Festival, when it got the Audience Award. This was, for me, another very important moment, where I felt, okay, no, people were interactive with the film. And this was the most important thing to me, because, as you know, documentary films have a lot of difficulty being shown in Egypt, and many in many other countries as well, unless it is in a festival or something like this. So when you have the public, the audience, who is really, laughing when they have to laugh, and cry and have tears, and really enjoying the film. So this was, for me, this was unbelievable. I can't describe how deeply satisfied I was. And then I started, when we showed the film in cinemas in Egypt, I was trying to go as much as possible to attend the screening and talk to the audience. So it was like me building the audience bit by bit. It's a crazy thing, It's like every time you would go, okay, you will have 30 people who like the film, and then they will start discussing, and then all this was interrupted because of COVID, okay, regarding Egypt, and it was supposed to go to other festivals also, like in Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, yes, in Amsterdam, the festival, not in Amsterdam. Where was it? In Sweden. It's going to Malmo in October. No, but there were 2-3 festivals. The Berlin, the Arab Film Festival in Berlin. I mean, the film was invited to many festivals because we have a good distributor as well, Pyramid. So they're trying their best to have the film circulate.
You're breaking up a little bit, unfortunately, but
yes. No, I was saying that the distribution is not easy. It's not easy, but I had a very strong starting point with.
But so, Marianne, I mean, we talk about this as being a golden age of documentaries in a way. There are a huge number of documentaries that are being made. We have festivals like IDFA, which is extraordinary. We have CPH Docs, True or False.
Yeah.
There are so many wonderful documentary festivals at the moment, but it seems often that you're either pigeonholed
yes.
into that documentary festival or Arab film festival, but also if you don't have somebody like Amazon with you or Netflix, it becomes very difficult for people outside of the festival circuit to see you. So how do you negotiate that?
Absolutely.
What do you think can be done?
I had very good news now that the film is in competition in Montpellier.
Excellent.
I just got the news 5 minutes ago, and I'm happy. Well, I mean, there, as you said, I mean, COVID interrupted the distribution in cinemas, of course, because there are very few people. I mean, there aren't many people who go to cinemas now, even though cinemas have reopened, but it's only 25%, and you have a lot of constraints, and people are still afraid to go. So now it's doing its round in festivals. I mean, the online festivals, and maybe starting October I will be able to travel, but I haven't been. Of course, nobody's traveling so far. I have hopes that the platforms will buy the film. And maybe this is the future of you know, how people will be able to see the film on a wider scale, you know, because people have gotten into the habit of seeing films on platforms a lot, even myself during the lockdown. So, but unfortunately, there is no Arab platform for Arab films. I mean, recently Netflix have bought some Arab films, but this is being very slow process. It's a very slow process, and this is what I was trying to say, that I feel there is a big gap between what is produced as documentary films and what is distributed. And I would love to see you know, a platform for Arab documentaries. Now there is for Arab series, Arab films, but they're mostly commercial films. But for documentaries, there isn't. And I would love to see a platform showing, you know, giving the chance to people to see those films, because I think when they come and they see the films, they enjoy the films, but they need to interact with the films. And maybe there will be a way of doing it with the platforms.
I think that's an excellent idea. And there's certainly there's absolutely a market for it, not just within the Arab world, but outside as well.
Yes.
The difficulty, of course, is getting the word out, particularly outside the MENA region, that these are films that need to be seen.
Yes, but you know what? Maybe now the people, because of the platforms, actually, people choose what they want to see. It's not that come and see this, they choose. So if the film is well presented within a certain category, within a certain genre, and there is a lot of talk about it, and you know, and I'm not talking about my film only, I'm talking about documentary films in general, that people, for example, lately there was an interest in women who loved cinema in the United States, you know, and this is, to me, this is something that will happen, I think, in September. And I'm very excited about it. I'm very, very excited about it.
Well, I mean, that's a film that absolutely I can think of a number of companies that would be possibly interested in it, and also obviously academics.
Yes, academics as well, of course, because these films are based on a lot of research, you know, so even if the film is not good, there is a lot to learn from the film.
The film is good and there's a lot to learn, so it hits both. It hits
I mean,
both
those
bells.
films, yeah, especially in documentary films, because it's the voice of the filmmakers, and it's, you know, what they want to say, what they've lived, what they've researched, it's quite interesting. So if it goes by theme, I think there will be an interest. And also academics, as you say, there is a lot of interest by academics.
Yeah, which it just seems that we were always having to remind the general public, but even academics, about the number of Arab women directors that not only are working now but have historically been so important to the industry. The fantastic book that American University Press of Cairo published quite a few years ago, the Encyclopedia of Arab Women Film Filmmakers, which is such a fundamental work and is much thicker than anything that might have been done similarly for, let's say, an encyclopedia of United States women filmmakers from the same period. But why is it that we're constantly having to redo this? Why are we constantly having to preach the same story over and over again?
Yeah, I think there should be a continuity in all this, you know, just not one film every now and then, but really a continuity, and people will go into this habit. They will go into this habit of watching this film and enjoy the films. I've noticed that people enjoy the films. That's very, very important, actually, to have the films there. And when they want to see it, this is the advantage of the platforms. It gives choices. It gives you see the film whenever you want. You know, depending on why you want to see the film. I mean, if you have I don't know, there are many reasons. I think we've learned to watch. I'm saying that, of course, cinema, the theater is extremely important. Of course, the theater has lost a lot now because people don't go to the cinema. But I think the platforms are as important, you know, because when you go to the cinema, you have a program that is imposed on you. But the platform, you choose your own program, and it's interesting. It's a different way of seeing things.
Are you at all concerned that the platforms will, some people are talking about the death of cinema, that the platforms are going to destroy the communal cinema experience, and that we're not going to go back? Is this something that you're concerned with at all?
Of course, I'm extremely concerned. I have more lighting now. I'm extremely concerned with this, but I don't think cinema will die. Yeah, some people are working here, and we have
Thank you
filmmakers
to
in the
your crew.
background. Thanks. No, I'm very concerned, but I don't think cinema will die because it's a unique experience. I mean, the platform, you watch the film on your phone, you watch it in your bed, you watch it, you know, in a classroom, but it's not being in a dark room, having this experience with the rest of the people, you know, hearing the people that you don't know, and they're just sitting here in the dark laughing or crying, or it's a very, very unique experience. I don't think it will ever die, you know. I don't think so. Okay, COVID has taught us a big lesson, that our habits have changed, and maybe when we come back, we'll come back differently, but there are certain things that will never die, and maybe other things that we've been consuming, over consuming, that we can live without them, and maybe we can live differently also. Something that we had never thought about because we were not obliged to do it.
No, I agree completely. I think all of these discussions about the death of cinema is really way too premature, because there's something about the communal viewing experience that that's part of us, that we want to continue.
Absolutely.
So just like holding a book and turning a page gives us something rather than just on a Kindle, so to go into the cinema is something I think that we're not willing to give up so easily.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
now there are people are thinking about open air theaters, about, you know, solutions in between, for example. It might work as well.
Somebody was asking in the chat just now how it would be possible to get some of your documentaries for a class. How should they go about? Should they be contacting your production company? What's the best way?
They can go on the site of Mr. International Films, and they will find the contacts for Zawiya as well, and they of course would be more than happy to distribute the film and to universities and academics and classrooms, and they've been used a lot like this. A film like Zilal, for example, traveled a lot in that sense.
Great. Okay, terrific. You were talking about going, before COVID came, you were talking about taking the film to cinemas in Egypt and watching the films with an audience. How has that experience, and also the emotion of seeing it at the Cairo International Film Festival for the first time, how has that experience changed how you're seeing your own work?
Well, that for me was, it has changed a lot of things, because as you know, I've been in this industry for 40 years now, but I'm not considered someone in the industry because, you know, I do documentary films, but the fictions I've made, of course, they went to festival. They were made by Yusuf Shaheen or other directors. They traveled a lot, but as far as documentary films are concerned, it is not really considered a product, you know, and you feel that you're not yet part of the industry. And this is what I would like to do, this turning point where documentary films are considered products and they have a life, and they can travel, you can make money with your film. It's not just making a film and that's it. I mean, it's not just you know, something, a caprice you want to do, or you're giving yourself no, it should be considered as a product, and it has a market, and it has a life outside the festival circuit. This is what I'm really trying hard to work on, this, not only for my film but for others as well. This is what I would like things to happen this way.
But do you think that there's been a generational shift with how documentaries are looked at now? You just said that for a long time you haven't really been thought of as somebody as a filmmaker or somebody within the industry. Don't you think that now that has changed, that the newer generations are looking much more broadly at cinema as a far more
of course,
horizontal way maybe than vertical?
Of course. Things have changed tremendously over the last 20 years. Things have changed completely, especially for in some countries they are more advanced than other countries. You know, for example, in Lebanon, the Lebanese have done a great job regarding documentary films. But yes, I agree with you that now there is a generation that are making very interesting documentary films, but still the reference is still the West. You see what I mean? If you cannot pre-sell your film, or you know, find a co-producer, that would guarantee a TV sale, for example. It's very hard to make the film, and to do this, it's very, very hard. It's very, very hard. So what I'm saying that it's still the reference is a Western reference. They have their own voice, but they really struggle having their films being seen, creating their own audience. You see what I mean? Creating an audience is very hard. It is not impossible, but it is hard, and they need to have certain facilitators to do that.
You're talking about if Western involvement isn't there, that how difficult is that it becomes. I'm assuming you mean not simply financially, but also just getting something off the ground. And do you think that if I'm going to get deep here, that the legacy of colonialism still has a sense of inferiority, that people within the MENA region feel that unless it has the imprimatur of Western money, of Western involvement, then it's not really good enough?
It's a two-way thing. It's a two-way thing. It's not. It's a two-way thing. It's unless you are. It's very hard, actually. It's extremely hard to be. Wait, I have to be very careful answering this question because it's a little bit delicate. It's a little bit delicate, you see. Yeah. This is why I'm trying to say that they have their own voice and they should have their own cinematographic language and not necessarily the format that is accepted by the West and only by the West, you see. Now, if you want to sell a film, it has to go into a certain format, the 90-minute format or the 45-minute format, or, it's very, very hard unless there is a real interest. But very often the interest is, I don't want to say folkloric, but sometimes with some of the first film I made,
when you
the reason,
sorry,
the first film I made, the reason why it hasn't been sold, because they said it looks too much like a Western, it looks too Western, I said, yeah, but it does exist also. This does exist in our societies. It's very mixed, it's very rich, it's very, there are a lot of stereotypes and a lot of those markets.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But if you look at the new generations of Egyptian documentary filmmakers, the subjects that are being addressed, do you see that it has expanded, that that more topics are being addressed now, or you feel that there's still a limitation?
Yes. No, absolutely. There is a new generation of even Egyptian filmmakers. Now the world is so open, so they get influenced by other filmmakers in the region, in the MENA region. They could see a lot of some subjects are extremely interesting and very well treated, even though we have a lot of constraints regarding censorship, regarding market constraints. It's not easy. It's not easy. You have to be very subtle in documentary filmmaking as well.
Yes. And I do believe that there have also been quite a lot of documentary makers who have become more willing to put their personal stories on screen, in not, I must say, not as beautifully as you have, because that would be a very difficult bar to surpass. But and I'm inventing this question as we're talking now, but do you think that the millennial generation is a generation that's questioning itself more than, let's say, the generations that came before?
Using documentary filmmaking, yes, definitely questioning more in many ways. I mean, they have different concerns. They have lived historical moments that are extremely important in the region, in the country, and documentary filmmaking is a language, is a tool. They can use it to express themselves, which is not easy because, as I'm telling you, there's a lot of censorship as well. So one must be very careful and do it in a very intelligent way. But all the subjects that are, whether it's sexuality or politics or family concerns or issues, that it's always controversial, always controversial.
Yeah, absolutely.
But of course, I believe that there is a generation, and because documentary filmmaking is relatively cheaper in the way that you don't need actors, you don't need very sophisticated cameras, you don't, there are no sets, that the real value is in the filmmaker himself. Okay, that's the time he spends doing that film, so they can afford to do it. They can afford to do it if they really want to do it, and if they have this passion for it, because it's very hard to stay a year in a editing room, and it's you need a lot of patience and a lot of passion to do it.
Absolutely, we do. You do. I think we're coming to a time when we should probably close. But before we do, first, if there are any other questions, quickly do let me know. I had a question also that's just come into my head, and it's not leading anywhere really, meaning that I don't have the answer in my head. But I'm thinking again about the question of generations, and I'm thinking about Let's Talk in particular, how open you are to hearing your daughter's voice, to hearing your daughter's opinions and your daughter's criticisms as well. And do you think that our generation is now more open to hearing younger voices than in the past, or not? Because somebody like Youssef Chahine, I think, was probably someone who did listen much more. But then perhaps you might say that your mother was not somebody who was willing to listen so much to your generation. So is there a pattern here, or is it really just individuals?
Yeah, but when you say we, I don't know who you mean. Who are we? I mean, our generation. I don't know. This is not an easy one, because I think the younger generation is paving their own way. They're different than ours. It maybe, I'm talking about myself, it took me a long time to reach that stage where I'm imposing myself, but I think they will do it earlier. They will do it earlier because they have a different way at looking at things. They have different tools. They have they're different. They feel different. They I don't know, but they have more concerns about time, about they analyze more. They ask themselves a lot of questions at a very early age, and they don't necessarily want to follow any tradition. I don't think so. They think differently. They're more open to things, that they are more exposed to things. And I think it's different. I feel they're different. It's a different generation, and I hope so too.
What's nice is that particularly in this moment in time, so many of us are talking in very pessimistic ways. We don't like the way the world is going. We don't like what's happening around us. We don't like all sorts of things. And yet it's nice to have you bring us back to it's not an alternate reality, it's a parallel reality, that there is something that we can be very optimistic about, that there are things that are moving in the right direction.
Yes, maybe we with this COVID, we went very low, you know, and I just heard a term 2 days ago that I keep repeating, and I can't find it in English actually. It's collapsologue.
Say it in
you
Arabic.
know, collapse. No, collapse. All right, the person who is
Yeah.
who is about collapse. The world is collapsing. All right, the world is collapsing. Collapsologue. So it must be the same thing in English, like a psychologist, or
Yeah.
but this guy is specialized in collapse. All right, collapse. The world is
Okay.
collapsing with the COVID. All right, but yeah, but I mean that we have lived a collapse of many things in the COVID, on the in the economies,
Yes.
and a lot of things, and now we have to, when we come back to life in a normal manner, we have to do it differently. We cannot do it the same way. You see, everyone has lived an experience, living alone, having a lot of time to meditate, trying to I mean, I consider myself lucky because I was able to stay in the countryside, you know, with nature, but this has done something in my thinking also, that things will not go back the same way.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. And on that note, I'm want to thank you very much for joining us for this conversation. Thank you to the audience who's been watching. For opportunities to see Let's Talk, do check the Bisser International website, the Zawiya website, and you can find information there on the film, not only that film, but on Marianne's other films. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you for your patience, you know, with all the technical problems I had.
We're all, I thank everyone in the audience for their patience. So it's great to see you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.